Okay, thanks, Allison, for inviting me to be a participant in today's webinar. Great discussion so far. I'm Marco Iacampo, Program Manager with the City of Toronto's Environment and Energy Division. And since, I want to say, 2012, 2013, have been involved in the development and advocacy that we've been doing with the provincial government around policy design, as well as design of the City of Toronto's initial HELP program. And I've since moved on to a unique role here at the city, looking at how we can sort of expand and scale up and scale out financial products like PACE financing, because the decarbonization of the existing building stock is a key priority of Transform TO, Toronto's climate action strategy. I also want to acknowledge that my colleague Stewart Dutfield is also on the line, who's the current program manager. So Stewart, please jump in at any point during this conversation if I'm misrepresenting any information, and also feel free to answer any tough questions that might follow. The purpose of my presentation today is to impart some lessons learned from Toronto's experience in managing a PACE-like program, now that we have several years of implementation experience under our belt. So throughout this presentation, I'll also sprinkle some advice and key considerations for you to think about as you design or improve upon your home retrofit finance program. Okay, so real quickly, Transform TO is Toronto's climate action strategy. It was unanimously adopted by Toronto City Council in 2017. It sets ambitious greenhouse gas emission reduction targets of 65% reduction by 2030 and 80% by 2050. Interestingly, last week, Toronto City Council deepened its commitment to climate action through the declaration of a climate emergency. And what that is sort of what that translates to, I guess, is for us to figure out and to determine. But ultimately, it's going to be a deeper acceleration and scale up and deeper investment into our current strategy around emissions reductions. As you can see, buildings represent the largest emission source in the city, and it's probably the sector that's most primed for revitalization and investment. Based on modeling we've done, if Toronto were to maintain its current trajectory, by 2050, we'd be looking at a 9 megaton emission gap. So how we go about improving that and the strategies, improving building energy efficiency, and decarbonizing our existing building stock is a key focus area where we anticipate, almost half of our emission reductions coming from in the future. So programs like HELP are a key strategy going forward. How we translate some of those targets into goals, what we're looking at here in Toronto is 100% of new buildings to be zero emission by 2030. As far as new construction is concerned, 100% of our existing buildings need to be retrofitted. And we need to sort of connect our buildings into existing low carbon and new low carbon thermal energy networks, amongst other actions. So local improvement charges have been part of the Ontario Municipal Finance Toolbox for some time now. Originally, they are used to support new linear infrastructure, things like sidewalks, water mains, where the cost for that infrastructure can be apportioned based on the frontage of a given property. In 2013, the province made amendments to this regulation, which now allow municipalities to impose special charges as assessments on a property tax bill to recover costs for certain energy and water improvements. And this is all under a municipal program bylaw that is to be defined and approved by municipal council. It's important to acknowledge that municipalities are have exclusivity as far as an LIC product in terms of other, competing financial products in the marketplace. We heard from Alex. It's the loan is not a personal debt. Actually, our lawyers don't like us referring to this as a loan because it is in fact a special charge, and that it's something that transfers at the time of sale. It's repaid over time through the tax bill, and as we heard, like taxes, it has the same remedies and ramifications in the case of arrears. What this means is, really provides a high level of security for a municipality who would be, flowing capital into projects on private property. It provides a high level of guarantee that these funds can be recollected should things sort of go wrong. Just some high-level stats on the home energy loan program's participation and uptake to date. We've received close to about 1,000 applications from interested homeowners. Those applications translate to over 200 completed deep energy retrofits. The average loan amount, or the average loan principal rather, is about $20,000. And about $4.5 million in capital has been deployed through the program. On the right there, you have a sample of some of our marketing collateral that we've used. And just interesting to note how, we're leading with home comfort and saving money on the energy bill as sort of the key benefits that we're trying to promote through this program. So I'm going to go real quickly through some of this is like my top 10 list of lessons learned and key considerations. I'm going to go through this super quick. If you have, because I want to make sure that people can ask their questions and I can dive deeper into any of these areas based on your interest. Okay, so the first item is our one window service adds value from the perspective of our customers. Stewart leads a team of 4 here at the Environment and Energy Division, and they're involved in all elements of outreach and communications and program support, application support with homeowners. A great deal of effort and continuous improvement has gone into creating a simplified pathway to support Toronto homeowners in undertaking a home energy retrofit. At the onset, efforts were made with Enbridge, who's our natural gas utility, to make sure that there's alignments between program requirements as far as their natural gas conservation program is concerned, so that the two dovetail. And as a municipality, we're in a unique position where we can promote all types of energy, natural gas, electricity, even water conservation and resilience incentives, benefits that may be of interest to a given homeowner. So we're not we're not singularly focused on one resource. So, a customer focus, I think, is critical when you consider the design priorities for a program like this. Efforts that you can make to streamline, to avoid process disconnects and duplications, I think goes a long way, especially from the perspective of the sanity of the clients you're trying to support with a program like this. And also the other thing to keep in mind is you want to be compliant with the regulation in your province, and there may be some weird, silly requirements. I certainly know in Ontario's example around notice, providing a written notice is just something that doesn't sort of, wouldn't be part of an ideal program administration if we had the chance to make the decision, but we're, guided by by the regulations that enable this program. Secondly, continuous program enhancement. We heard this earlier from Dunsky. If you looked at the program that we originally designed in 2014 and the program that's in existence today, they are very different. And we've gone through different iterations to address market needs. Homeowners are telling us that loan amounts were not enough to undertake their retrofits, so we were able to improve upon that and provide homeowners now up to $75,000 or 10% of the current value assessment for the property. We were able to get more of an initial disbursement into homeowners' pockets to get their project started. And we expanded the list of eligible measures to go beyond energy efficiency. We now support renewable energy. A lot of this took effect in 2017, and then in 2018 we noticed that there was a doubling of applications. So certainly there was an impact there. I think in terms of considerations, regular dialogue with your program stakeholders, participants, as well as your internal city staff who are involved with program administration is important to understand where the pain points are and where there's emerging needs and how you can best address those. I think you want to be able to build in as much flexibility into your program bylaw that gets adopted by your city council that gives you the abilities to make minor tweaks to your program without having to consistently seek your city council resolution. An example of that is, it's been sort of a tumultuous period here in Ontario where there's been quite a bit of change in terms of government direction as it relates to energy and environment and incentives. So we have the ability to sort of move with the market and align our financing with whatever's available at any given time as it relates to incentives. So as I noted, about 200 projects have been completed to date. We have a low, by most measures, that's a low volume. What we're finding is about a 25% conversion rate. So for every 4 applications that get submitted, only 1 in 4 actually converts into a completed retrofit project that's accessing finance from the city. Half of our homeowners who have mortgages drop out at the lender consent process, which is a requirement. We heard from Dunsky that there's this spectrum of the types of programs out there, and certainly we have a program that requires certain responsibilities and actions on the part of homeowners in order to access our financing. Mortgage lender consent is one of them. Mandatory EnerGuide pre and post assessments. There's contracts, invoice submittals. These are all required and expected of our participants in order to access the financing. So certainly, greater volume can be achieved with less requirements, but there's a trade-off to that as well. And I think understanding the market segment and who it is that you're trying to serve and tailoring your marketing and outreach accordingly is important advice. Now, the juxtaposition to a low volume is high quality and deep retrofits that have been completed. Based on our evaluation of the HELP program, we have enabled homeowners to go deeper, and the financing has unlocked comprehensive retrofit projects. On average, a HELP project will save 64 gigajoules of energy per project, which outperforms a typical EnerGuide project. Also, $560 in energy savings is what our participants experience on average. We're also seeing longer payback measures like windows, like a high incidence rate for windows. And projects on average are taking 7 to 8 months to complete their renovation. So this is far from, a furnace and air sealing program. The program attracts those who are undertaking comprehensive retrofits. Energy is a part of it, and we're seeing it through this evaluation. I think some advice here for my municipal colleagues is, offering options for matching payment term to the asset useful life is key. We provide up to 15 years, which, aligns nicely with some of the longer payback measures. And a great thing I think that we do is we extend financing to also support non-energy improvements. So things like demolition, environmental remediation, are things that we're able to fold into a HELP loan because they encourage and sort of unlock energy measures that otherwise may not happen.
Marco, that $560 savings, that's an annual savings on their bill?
Correct.
Okay. And what are we saying that a typical Toronto household's annual energy bills are? Is that like $3,000, $4,000?
I think that represents a 30% energy saving on average. Stewart, please jump in at any point if I'm wrong.
Oh, I think I've got him muted. Sorry, there was some
I
background
want to say
noise,
it's
so I cut people off. I'm gonna open the lines and hope that it's quieter this time.
okay. I'll move along then. Um, EnerGuide home rating system, can't say enough great things about it. It really is sort of I want to say the unsung hero of the program. For those unfamiliar, EnerGuide is Canada's national rating system for consumer products, equipment, homes, amongst other things. What it does for a program like ours is provide some standardization around home energy assessments, which is ultimately, a key information piece that we, the city, are making, loan decisions about. It provides a robust measurement and verification data set as well, because all completed projects, we have all of the NRCan provides to us both the pre and post assessment. So it's a real robust data set that allows for results reporting as far as energy, cost savings, greenhouse gas emissions go, and it helps us to report upwards to our senior management and council. So really, don't reinvent the wheel. I would encourage EnerGuide to really be the foundation of any home energy finance program. Homeowners find a high value in it. The consultation with the energy advisor is helpful, and as I mentioned, it really does de-risk the capital that we deploy through this program, because we know it's going into energy efficiency improvements that will drive savings.
And are you providing free rebates so that those assessments are free to the homeowner?
We don't. However, Enbridge, our natural gas utility in Ontario, does, and we're able to stack that into the program.
Perfect.
Achieving a cost-neutral administration, I think, has proven to be tricky for us. When we were having conversations about introducing a program like this in Toronto, the fact that the regulation allows us to recover our administration charges, or rather to recover our costs directly from program participants, was a real attractive feature. So the user pay model can work. It has not fully worked in Toronto's example, because we're not generating enough revenues from program participants to offset our program costs. And we're, I think we're a bit unsure as to what, homeowner sensitivity is around higher pricing, because it is a very much a human resource intensive program to deliver. So I think understanding, your fixed and variable costs that are required to deliver a program like this, and setting an appropriate administrative charge to recover those expenditures, is something that you'll really need to think through, because delivering this on a cost neutral basis, under sort of like a user pay model, I think is the right way to go. Soup to nuts delivery model is labor intensive. I think I've alluded to this already, but this is very much a centrally administered program by the City of Toronto, where, from start to end, we've got our hand in delivery, whether it be marketing and promotions, application processing, contracting, to the final tax, adding the charges to the tax assessments. It's all managed by city staff, not just within the core team of our Environment Energy Division, but across 5 other city divisions, from our city clerk to legal to our revenue services. The one benefit of this is we're able to maintain control and oversight over the program and build in our consumer protection pieces as needed, which help to de-risk the program. I just want to sort of just identify that there is a minimum, while there's different models for the delivery of an LIC program, there always will be a minimum role for a municipality, and that is primarily passing property-specific bylaws to impose a local improvement charge and adding the tax billings. But there's a whole bunch of steps and effort and activities that lead up to that I think they're, a role for a delivery agent. And a third-party model makes a lot of sense. It's not something that we've implemented here in Toronto, But I think in order for us to get to scale, we'll need to look to that. And there's also a huge role for channel partners. And when I talk about channel partners, I mean contractors, installers, equipment manufacturers, energy advisors, all of the folks who are in the field, in industry, working in this space of home renovations. That there's an opportunity for them to be to partner with in order to promote and essentially drive sales for a program like ours. Sustainable capital funding sources. So when we introduced our program, we utilized a $10 million reserve fund as our initial funding tranche. So it was essentially a tax supported pot that we dipped into. But we know that a long-term solution, one that's scalable and flexible to meet the growing needs of the program. And when we go to recapitalize, that we'll have to look at potentially non-city sources. So what I'm referring to here, there's a variety of options that are out currently in the market that'll be out soon in the marketplace that municipalities should start thinking about in terms of how to capitalize their program, whether that be through green bond issuance, revolving funds, new programming from the GMF, infrastructure banks. These are all potential sources. Think about approaches where that will help to crowd in private capital. And also, you might want to start early conversations with your financing staff around, your municipal debt limits for those who are, capitally constrained, and any implications that a program like this might have for your municipal credit rating. Another tricky part is getting the marketing and the promotions right. Community-based approaches, we've had, I think, varying levels of success and effectiveness. I think the hard part is how to maintain ongoing momentum. From my experience in managing the program, city councilors, our gas utility were real effective channels. City councilors, are largely trusted in the community. We always found that we were able to provide them with, a communications toolkit that they were then able to disseminate through their social media, their newsletters, etc. That was a real effective way. Ads that we've bought through digital media were always a lot more cost effective and effective in terms of hits than traditional media. We also undertook contractor engagement and training events where we would explain to contractors, HVAC contractors, for instance, what the program's all about. Make sure that they understand how they can help a homeowner apply for the program, and provided them with marketing and promotional material so they could promote it on our behalf. We also had modest budgets, and I think the lack of proper marketing expertise to really push and promote this program effectively. So leveraging those channel partners, as I mentioned, is key. And in Toronto, we started with a citywide program, mass marketed to everyone uniformly in the same sort of way. But I think in hindsight, geo-targeting and starting small, perhaps in a neighborhood, for instance, that might be using oil for space heating, especially if you have a GHG reduction target, that may be a good starting point to really do a focused community-based engagement as a sort of a starting point or as a pilot before you roll out more broadly.
Small plug here too for energypoverty.ca. You can now go on and see where you have single family homeowners who are experiencing energy poverty in particular neighborhoods or whatever. You could target them that way as well.
Great point. So my last point here is that what we learn is financing alone is not a silver bullet. Just the provision of a low interest, longer payback loan, in today's day is not enough to compel a homeowner to take action for energy efficiency. I think a missing piece to this broader puzzle is a more supportive regulatory context with enabling strategies like home energy reporting and disclosure, mandatory energy or carbon intensity standards for single family properties, incorporating carbon pricing in our fossil fuels, that these are key drivers that would drive the market transformation necessary for scale up of energy efficiency, and then having a financing piece that's available amongst other incentives. Like you need that entire, enabling regulatory framework that supports energy efficiency. So things to consider are, what additional carrots and sticks within your municipal powers can you introduce alongside or before you take the plunge in introducing a financing program to drive the market. And one of those is building energy literacy might be a starting point with homeowners as a first step. So that people have an understanding of their homes, what the opportunities are for energy efficiency and emission reduction. Lastly, I just wanted to plug like some really useful resources. When Toronto, there was this Cheerio initiative that was led by the Clean Air Partnership and the Toronto Atmospheric Fund at the time, where we brought together a bunch of GTA municipalities. We all put in a few dollars, and we're able to get the help of Dunsky actually to help us with a draft program design. So there's great resources available through the Clean Air Partnership under the Cheerio initiative. There's also legal opinions in there that are geared towards a municipal decision-making audience. We've got primers and FAQs. There's an M&V framework. So there's a wealth of knowledge available via that web link that might be a starting point for some folks. Before I hand the controls back over to Allison, I just wanted to share some exciting news with the CUSP network. I'll be taking on a new role actually with FCM and Yee's team at the Green Municipal Fund to support, to lead rather, the development of the Community Eco-Efficiency Acceleration Fund. So really happy to sort of take on this new role and continue to collaborate with folks as they take new programs to market and sort of be an advisor and a resource to you in the coming weeks and months.
Nice mic drop. I like that. Yeah, so October 28th is the day that Marco transitions over to FCM and will become your resource for all things community eco-efficiency acceleration. And I think that's really exciting and a great hire by FCM. We have a few minutes left for questions, and I'm just going to hit the ones that were in the chat room earlier that I missed, and I think they would apply as much to Marco as to the other folks earlier. Andrea Flowers from Ottawa asks if you've had any losses associated with your programs to date.
There's none that I know of. As far as the Toronto program's concerned.
No, just confirming, no, we've had no issues. We've had a couple of P2P things where people get kicked off the automated payment system for a variety of reasons. We had one issue with one customer, but we've kind of resolved that, and so have had no substantive issues at all in terms of default.
Okay, that was Stewart, also from Toronto. So no major issues, a couple of little glitches along the way. And to the point of Calgary, when I asked them to weigh in, they also aren't on a mic, so they just wanted us to know that they're participating in the Municipal Advisory Council with Energy Efficiency Alberta and Edmonton, and are really interested to see how the pilot program is progressing there. So they'll be working alongside with Edmonton and hopefully the administrator of their PACE program in Alberta when it gets rolling. Does anybody else have questions? I'm going to put you on mute, Stewart. I think it's you who's causing our issues. Maybe you can just put yourself on mute because I don't see. Oh, yeah. Thanks, Stewart. Anybody else have any questions for Marco? This is a great presentation and really helpful. Of course, all of these slides will be made available to you along with the recorded webinar so that you can re-reference it later. And thanks for that link at the end to the Cheerio files, which I wasn't familiar with either.
Hey, Allison, I do have a question, Kevin from Halifax, for Marco.
Please, Kevin, go for it.
So I noticed on the help website, part of the criteria is that the property owner pays the contractor for the service done. How big of an impact is that for the property owner if they're going through, the financing help program? because they need the financing? Where do they get the money to pay the contractor?
Right.
Upfront.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we're able to provide homeowners who enter into a contract to participate in the program can get up to 30% of their cost in the form of initial disbursement. So we're basically providing people with a down payment to get their project started. Now, a lot of contractors expect payment upon completion of work, and that can span any time over, a 7 to 8 month program, which is what we're experiencing on average.
Right.
So we do put homeowners in a bit of a precarious position where they essentially need to, in some cases, seek like bridge or construction financing to get them through the renovation, because the final disbursement is provided at the back end of the process once things are complete.
Right.
So this is, again, one of those trade-offs between being, prudent with capital, taxpayers funded capital that we're pushing through this program, but, not of great convenience to a homeowner.
Right.
But, in order to get our finance and our legal staff and everyone to sign off on the program, that's where we landed. Now that number did grow from 10% to 30%. So hopefully now that, as Stewart mentioned, there's been no defaults, we, in the next iteration, we might be able to push and provide a greater initial disbursement.
Right on. Thank you.
I have a quick question, Marco. It sounds sorry, Andrea, I have a quick question here. It seems like the Enbridge, the natural gas provider, has been a great partner in this project, but how does that reconcile with decarbonization? What's the plan there?
Yeah, that's a cheeky question.
Not really.
I don't have a real strong answer for that. Fuel switching is certainly part of the mandate of Transform TO, but I think we need to improve building energy performance, building envelopes. I don't think the Toronto market is ready, as of today, to basically do away with natural gas for space heating. I think this is going to be a long-term journey, and the extent that we can leverage incentives from our natural gas utility, I think, is an important thing for the time being.
Is there any way that you're encouraging people, at least on the heating oil side, to take the further leap to heat pumps as opposed to going to natural gas? I mean, where somebody has a natural gas boiler and you're getting a higher efficiency one, I can see that. But when you're trying to move people off of heating oil, are you trying to get them direct to heat pump?
Yeah, that's a great strategy. Stewart, did you have a thought on this?
Sure. So I think as part of that sort of comprehensive, the time intensive part we do is that we've done some training too of our team and a bunch of other people, educating them what are the options. And so we're obviously not going to dictate at this stage to what a person could put in, but we do, as it relates to heat pumps, we're definitely interested in pushing that technology. An area we've also found that there's kind of an opportunity where we want to keep people is there's a lot of homes in Toronto that are also currently heated with electricity, and the costs of that are exceptional. So we've had community meetings with councillors and members of communities to say, look, instead of doing your baseboard heaters, let's get you on a heat pump. So we know the technology is out there, and so we try to let people, make people aware of it. I think for a lot of people, the challenge is just currently that gas is so much cheaper. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
No problem.
Andrea from Ottawa, I cut you off.
Okay. Marco, your slide speaks to a 2% administrative cost to administer the program, and in Ottawa, that's been the most significant barrier in getting an LIC or PACE program started. What do you estimate the actual administrative cost would be if you're looking at using the full legislation and recovering costs for the administration?
So the legislation permits municipalities to set their administrative rate. So I think the hard part is when we first launched the program, there were a lot of incentives from from the IESO, from NRCan. There was a lot of there were a lot of grants that were helping us to offset our startup costs. So we operated during this period where, we were basically subsidizing homeowners' participation through the program from these grants. Now that, that money's been spent and we're no longer being subsidized that way, I don't believe the admin fee has been updated to reflect actual costs incurred by the city. So that's, I'll defer to Stewart sort of on if there's a strategy to address that going forward.
Or even an order of magnitude, like is it 5%? Is it somewhere between there? Is it substantially higher?
See, the volume is, with a low volume program, we're unable to spread some of our fixed costs in a way that you would once you achieve a higher critical mass. So I don't have a more definitive number for you, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think to jump in, this is Stewart from Toronto. I think the other thing we're doing too is we are working on other things other than help, and I think we found too that the municipal role, in as much as we can help provide finance, is really important, and we want to push that. I think we see opportunities to refine and refocus the programs on people who may have a challenging time as it relates to, equity concerns around accessing financing. At the same time, there's a lot of people who are getting their homes retrofitted anyways. As, Marco mentioned, the EnerGuide thing we think is really key. And we know there are thousands of people retrofitting their homes because we now have access to the NRCan audit data. So, in so much as a part of the team is working on help and directly supporting homeowners going through that process, there's also a lot of things we're doing too now. We've got some NRCan money this year to really push like a sort of education on why home energy retrofitting is so important. And I think, politically and for a bunch of other reasons, we're at the right opportunity. There's a huge desire for people to know what they can do. And so I think that's another aspect of a municipality's work that, it comes out of one pot in a sense, but we're doing a lot more than just providing financing under the auspices of our residential program.
Okay. Edmonton, as you continue to go through that, if you have a sense of what your administrative costs will be as you start to go, or if Halifax, you have a sense of what your costs would be, that would be helpful because it has been perhaps the single biggest barrier in moving it forward in Ottawa.
Yeah,
it's Janice here also from Ottawa. I just had a question for Marco. Marco, you had a slide that mentioned that supporting sort of elements of the help program would be requirements, energy performance requirements for buildings. Is that something that you're looking at or have implemented for existing buildings, or is that just for new buildings that you're thinking about that?
Right. You're correct. That requirement is typically, discussed in the context of like existing large commercial buildings. It is presently under the city's is undertaking a comprehensive existing building net zero strategy to address the existing building stock. And one of the strategies that's under consideration, and the same strategy that's been recently launched in New York City under their local law is mandatory energy performance requirements. So whether that's an energy use intensity or GHG intensity, that's something that we're not, like, I don't think it certainly would apply as well in the municipal context. I think probably the next major policy intervention for existing single family is something that the province of Ontario was looking at around home energy reporting and disclosure at time of listing. Like that's likely if there was a sequencing that would probably happen first. But I was really just floating it out there as a mandatory requirement that would potentially be a game changer in terms of market transformation.
Yeah, I agree on that. But is there any sort of work being done about giving legislative authority to municipalities to do that kind of thing?
Yeah, as far as I understand it, it's unlikely that we have the municipal authority to introduce something like that because buildings and energy are largely under the purview of the Ontario Building Code. So
Yeah,
we would,
particularly new buildings, but even existing buildings, like what New York has done, seems like it would be outside of the mandate of the Municipal Act, unless you guys have read it otherwise.
right. So I think we can maybe chat about this offline, because there's a lot of nuance to it.
Yeah, I'd be
So
happy
happy
to.
to have that conversation.
Thanks. We are over time. I just wanted to give Mark Brostrom an opportunity to talk about the administrative charges in response to Andrea's question. I think he was jumping in there.
Yeah. Well, we haven't determined exactly what it will be. The legislation that we have in place is it can be up to 5% of the project cost. So again, we think that's again part of the challenge too, is if you bring in that up to that maximum and then add on the financing costs on top of that, then it really, it starts to get up there as far as a loan. So on the flip side of that, if you're adding, if you're providing that service, that one-stop shopping service, or whatever, again, Marco talked a lot about that. It's what's provided. I think that, then there's some value you can add. But if it's just to push money through to somebody to do all this work, I think that's, that will be a challenge.
Yeah, thanks.
And Shannon, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you guys are at an interest rate of about 4.25%, and that is full cost recovery of your one dedicated FTE that does the administration of the program. Is that accurate? Or Kevin? May have lost them because we are a few minutes over. We can follow up with Shannon if that's important, Andrea, for that one, because I think that they do have a slightly higher interest rate because of they are fully recovering their admin charges from the program. This has been a fantastic call. Thanks so much for your participation. Thanks so much for your very active participation and questions. Obviously an area of great interest to all of us as it emerges for us. And hopefully to Yi, and I noticed Kate Fleming came on, the LC3 project director at one point as well as now Marco, who is straddling his seat currently between the City of Toronto and joining FCM. I hope that this information from our cities and some of their concerns has been helpful to you guys as well, and to our other partners from ICLE, Clean Air Partnership, and if I'm forgetting anybody else, I apologize. Thanks also for joining, and we'll make sure that you have links to the recorded webinar as well as the presentations here so that you can share them with your network membership as well.
It's Renee in Halifax. If I may, one small regulatory consideration, since we've got the folks possibly on the line. In Halifax, if you do a change to your property, like improve it, that would trigger a reassessment where we would go out and say, okay, you're worth more now, and then that would result in higher property tax. In Nova Scotia, our Assessment Act was actually amended along with the legislation that enabled municipalities to provide this financing. Our Assessment Act was amended to say if you do this, it's not going to trigger a reassessment. So just around the cost sensitivity, I want to throw that out there. Depending on how assessments are done in your jurisdiction, it might be something else you want to consider.
And are you suggesting that people don't want to see a higher assessment because that would lead to higher property taxes, and so that's the benefit?
Absolutely.
But if they wanted to resell their house, then they're going to see a lower assessed value, and that's not going to see the value that's now been placed on the home through that solar system. That doesn't seem to be.
Assessed is completely different from market. So they'd recognize it in market. The assessed value is just going to impact the amount of property taxes that they're paying.
Yep.
So, you install a pool, that increases your value. Typically, we would go out and our assessor would say, okay, values increase, charge them more taxes. So there's a bit of a break, so to speak, for these energy improvements to say, okay, you're going to recognize that value when you sell your house because somebody will appreciate that possibly, but we're not going to increase your value to charge you extra tax.
I like that.
There you go.
Is anyone else doing that? Toronto?
No.
Yeah. I guess that would get fairly challenging because you've got so many different tools in that help program, so many different technologies and retrofit options.
So for ours, it's a sweeping generalization in our actual Assessment Act, which is for our province, right? So assessment of a residential property, we don't consider that. That permit doesn't trigger a reassessment. So I mentioned it because you've been talking a bit about the regulation and sort of jurisdictions looking to enable this. They might want to look at that aspect as well.
Yeah. Typically, what I've understood is like energy efficiency, where you're replacing equipment for like or better, or hopefully in most cases better. Like that typically doesn't get captured through a tax reassessment. It's when you're taking out building permits and adding new floor space or doing a major renovation, like that's usually the driver for like an increase in assessment. It's less likely that the energy components would result in any, or a material impact on a reassessment.
Yeah, it depends on your triggers for your permitting system, right? So if your permitting system is linked up to trigger the reassessment, it depends if your contractor has to go out to get a permit to put solar panels on, that could trigger it. Depending, it's all jurisdictional, right? It's how you guys would work. Anyway, just something
for us in Ottawa, it's a great thing to flag for us, because often what we've seen is that work is happening in tandem with the energy work, right? The major retrofits are happening at the same time. So even if you're not focused only on energy, you're going through the process, you may be triggering these other things. So I appreciate you bringing that to the front as we retry to launch a program on that.
Excellent. Well, we are over time, and I'm going to let people go and get on with their days. Thanks again, all. And of course, you know how to get a hold of one another just through our members at cuspnetwork.ca.